This is a very simple one too. These are part of the British Naval Landing Brigade sent in 1914 to the mainland. They were near Brussels in the ring forts, and this old barracks building still survives. So I found a photograph of it through one of our Huguenot brick walls from many years ago in front of it, and through the figures with cobblestone and a little gravel to blend in their bases. Real simple display to do, and believe it or not, this one is probably only 10 inches by 9 inches tall and about 4 inches deep. Another example where we were so excited when we finished our new World War II holding action, the East backdrop, that we hit print and the wrong paper was in our art printer, so it only printed 1/3 of it, maybe even 1/4 of it, and everyone had gone home and I was stuck at work alone without a car, and I was just dying to see what it looked like. So I said, what's the smallest possible vignette that I can build? So believe it or not, just past that Stuka, there's no backdrop, it ends. So some of you, I think, got a sample of that, a 24-incher tonight. But just taking our Hudson Allen Arch, a wall section, one of our Panzer Grenadiers, and a little bit of a loose scatter, and all of a sudden it looks like you're someplace. Now there's another little trick I put in here that I often do for photography. I learned that a long time ago doing full-size set construction for the auto companies before it all went to CGI, is sometimes a foreground element puts things into context and shadows do. So here's a case where I built one of our branches and I just put it in front of the lens. So this is only a branch of a larger tree, and it throws a shadow against here too. That's stuff that we see every day that you don't see in models. So sometimes just go out and take a look at the real world and try to put that into your models. This one's even simpler. It's our World War II Marine reservist, and there's some wonderful photographs taken in the 1940s by the government, and I found this one in particular and just made a print of it and put it on a piece of sidewalk. And this one's about 3 inches deep and about 6 inches long and 6 inches high, so it's a real tight one. You could actually divide up a bookshelf by having books on either side and have a window in the center and put a little backdrop and a little vignette in there. And I've got that actually in my office at work with a horse guards parade where there's books on either side and then the window in between are figures. So shelf displays. I've always been an advocate of building shelf dioramas because lots of us have got very little room in our man caves. And a shelf diorama, most of them are 28 inches long, even though it's a 30-inch shelf, and usually about 10 inches deep. So a shelf diorama is something that you can put in the shelf and put it back in a box and put something else in later and rotate things out if you have limited space. So this has got a simple painted backdrop and some early trees I made years ago. So that helps put miniatures in context. That diorama we just showed you has, in this case, the 24th, or I should say 24th Michigan, part of 1st Corps, first day at Gettysburg, entering Herbst Woods. Next photo. Marshland diorama. That's up in Canada now. It's been photographed lots with 1st Legion figures on it from every possible angle, and that had a real simple backdrop on it. Water features are a lot of fun to do, and we're thinking about our next workshop covering how to do water in your dioramas, so keep posted for that. Go ahead. So little details, sometimes wildflowers, grass and things that are unexpected, but they're always there. If you're going to build a display for your models, throw in some things that are not necessarily military directed, because military is just part of the larger world. It's part of the culture. There's still civilians, there's still farms. Go ahead, move. Go ahead. Water lilies. Those are just paper punches cut out. I took that same model and put a couple of Reb stragglers on there to put it in context. Now, when I'm doing research, sometimes for the material culture, I'll take my collection just like Don Troiani does for his paintings. He'll actually put people in either reproduction clothing or period clothing. I had a couple young men out last winter to model in my original GI equipment and took lots of pictures of them just to see how the footprints in the snow looked and how the clothing looked when it was worn on young men who are not overweight and old like me. And that helped a lot when I was sculpting these figures. And again, this is a very small, go ahead, next picture, diorama built to send to the trade show in London in December, and this is only 12 inches by 18 inches. The backdrop actually comes out and it's stored underneath this, and you're able to ship these. The tree's pinned in with the pins that we use, so the tree pinned out and laid flat in the box, so you can actually put this whole thing in a box and store it away and rotate your displays. Erica, next. Same thing. real small display, same footprint. Backdrop's removable, sets on a channel in the back. I love this set because I've been firing, live firing, muzzle-loading artillery since I was 18 years old. We host a shoot up at Grayling, Michigan every year, and after you finally zero in these guns and you hit somebody 1,000 yards, everybody cheers. And I thought, you know what? I bet your gunners used to originally do the same thing. They hit their target and they went, yeah, we hit them, boys. So that's why I titled that. But look at how different that same set looks putting into a diorama. And when you pull back, look how small it is, 12 by 18, and again, removable backdrop. So this could have Rev War figures no matter what you want on it, which is, again, the next step that took me deciding we need to have some sort of modular system that anyone can buy and match together, and that was really the birth of building our Scenics to Go bases. It was doing those displays for the London show about 1.5 years ago, where I said, you know what? I bet you other folks would like small vignettes like that too. And that's just 2 of our bases. You can just barely see a seam here with a backdrop, and it looks like a huge space, but it really isn't. And you can see that same thing. In this case, I've only got 2 bases, a backdrop, and 2 figures zoomed in close, and it tells a story. Something's going on. Same vignette, we took our cabin, which is actually the Toy Soldier and Model Figure giveaway cabin, our diorama, we photographed it, modified it a wee bit, and all of a sudden it's got a whole different flavor. That's right, we burned it. So go ahead. I love artillery. I've always been obsessed with it. This happens to be the 1st Ohio Light Artillery during the Civil War, famous painting. And again, I just thought I'd throw these in here. I've been shooting live artillery since I was 18 years old, and probably one of the most fun things I've done recently is last spring, my buddy Matt Switlick finished restoring his French 75, his World War I French 75, to full operation with a working recuperator. We took it down to Tennessee to shoot. And you can see here's a demonstration this last June at Gettysburg for the 150th, where they're showing a Napoleon going through all the action. Look at all the smoke. But every man has got a particular professional job to do so people don't get hurt with artillery. It's the one thing we've always tried to do when we design things, that if you look at a 4-figure set, everyone's doing what they should be doing at that moment in time so nobody loses a hand. Again, just look at the world around you. When you're out driving in the country, or if you're at a metro park, take a few pictures for reference for when you get back, because you'll forget it if you don't have a photo. And you can take that idea like the wildflowers, and I actually ground up my own and dyed my own ground foam rubber so I could match those wildflowers for this fence line. Same thing show up here. And here's a case where we have our Gettysburg backdrop, and we have 2 wildflower and weed spaces and 2 artillery crews. He's sighting the gun. And in this case over here, he's thumbing the vent, and he's actually ramming a round home. And here's number 5 ready to run the round forward. So when you look at Civil War artillery, or matter of fact, even Napoleonic artillery, everyone's doing a particular thing at a particular time. This is our backdrop where we actually put in Reb infantry advancing. That's to the left of the angle, the view you would have seen. And that's a Yankee crew firing their gun, pulling the lanyard. And that's what happens when you pull a lanyard. And in slow motion, you catch that ball of flame. That's a burning powder at the end of this short howitzer. And you can see where the friction primer has gone off, the smoke coming out the back. That's Matt's French 75, actually right there. French 75 is kind of a fun gun. It fires from an open hammer, and there's one of my buddies, Ken Bauman, who owns an original 3-inch ordnance rifle too, and he's firing this at our range. And we had a couple young men who work as private contractors building one-of-a-kind weapons for our special forces. And so they were the ones working with us on the increments for those guns. And one of the young guys sits down with the gun and says, I want to sit in the gunner's seat. And we said, okay. And you'd think he would have known better. He was leaning against the barrel when he pulled the lanyard, so his whole body goes back with the recoil of that thing. But because the French 75 is smooth, he didn't get hurt. But I got it in slow motion, and what a hoot, the look on his face. So, again, taking a simple set and just taking a grassy base, an embankment, and a backdrop, all of a sudden it takes that gun crew and ports it to a whole different environment at another time. Very small, very effective. Same environment with some infantry firing over the parapet. Go ahead. Again, I have a series of pictures where I just put different figures in the exact same setup, and it looks totally different. So again, there's just a grassy base, a grassy embankment, and a backdrop, and a couple different sets of figures. Here's a case where it's just a road section, a backdrop, and two of our new figures. Those are coming in Thursday too, our dead Confederate casualty and our Yankee trooper. Looking at the cost of war. Same thing, two bases, one backdrop, and some of our Reb infantry. And I thought this was an interesting view again. Remember what I said, you don't always have to be looking at the figures? I think this tells a great story that they're rushing toward the round tops. And you're kind of behind them and you're seeing where they're going. It tells a different story. So play with your figures when you get home, setting them up in a way that you normally wouldn't. Again, just the wildflowers. Wanted to show the perspective with a simple figure in a backdrop. That's only a foot deep. This is a much earlier one. This is actually a smaller base. It's about 11 inches deep. Again, simple photo backdrop here. A wall section because you can't see past the wall, and that really helps disguise the horizon line and extends the scene. Go ahead. I love these vintage advertising signs, and we've replicated that on many of our buildings. They're all hand painted, and again, it kind of sets a time and place. In this particular instance, it could be the 1920s, but we know it isn't because the Germans left a sign going to the Normandy front, so that puts it in 1944. Same building. Signs are really a nice way to kind of set a time and place. Little details that are, again, not necessarily military, but they help make this real place. Remember how I talked about shadows? These shadows make it appear more real than it is. It's all an illusion. So if you're taking photos, especially with your phones today, everyone's got a great camera in their phone. Try taking some pictures and intentionally putting some harsh light and shadows in it, and you'll be surprised at the results. Don't use the flash. Go ahead. So we just kind of zip through. These are all really small vignettes. This one, well, that last one, again, signs set a place. Sometimes that's an effective way to do things. That same place, put a flak gun there, whole different environment.